Sometimes, the thing that breaks us is also what rebuilds us. This is a story about a man, a boat, and the secret that changed everything. This is Tide and Timber.
Heave or we will die today.
Dawn broke cold and clear over Whitby Harbour. The kind of morning Yorkshire fishermen call deceptive, beautiful on the surface, but the barometer's dropping and there's weather coming from the North Sea. I'd been awake since 4. Not from worry, from purpose. Today I would launch patience. 4 years of work, 1,460 careful days. Every plank fitted, every seam caulked. Every lesson my grandfather taught me, honoured in wood and brass and honest labour. And then I would deal with Eleanor. She'd spent the night at the bed and breakfast 2 blocks over. I'd given her that mercy, a warm bed, a roof, dignity. More than she'd given me, truth be told. But that's not how I measure things. 10 o'clock, I'd told her. Come back after the launch, then we'll talk. The harbour was quiet when I backed the tractor down the ramp. A few locals had gathered, the harbour master, Tom Ridley from the chandlery, old Captain Whitley who'd sailed with my grandfather. Emma stood on the quay, arms folded against the cold, watching. They don't make a fuss in Yorkshire. No fanfare, no speeches, just silent nods and the understanding that a man finishing what he started deserves witness. The winch groaned. Patience slid backward into the water, inch by careful inch. And then she floated. 4 years of wondering if I'd got the calculations right. 4 years of midnight doubts about whether the hull would sit true in the water. She floated perfectly. Emma came to the water's edge, her eyes bright. Dad, she's beautiful. You did it. I nodded. Couldn't quite speak yet. There's something about seeing your work proven, about patience rewarded, that catches in your throat. Then Emma's expression changed. She was looking past me, toward the harbour entrance. Dad, I turned. Eleanor stood at the edge of the quay. 10 o'clock, as promised. Dressed nicely, the good coat, careful makeup. Looking contrite, humble, and changed. I'd spent 4 years learning to see things clearly. Learning to read the grain of wood, the set of a sail, and the truth when it is right before your eyes. I could see her cunning plans, her hopeful and scheming calculations. Eleanor and I stood on the deck, the gentle harbour waves lapping against the hull. Emma had made herself scarce, gone to the chandlery, giving us privacy. Then Eleanor took a seat on the cockpit bench as I stood at the helm of my boat. Thomas, she began, and her voice had that carefully practiced tremor. I was wrong. I was shallow. I didn't see what I had. I didn't see you. I let her speak. A fair hearing. That's only right. Then Eleanor broke into tears. Richard was a mistake, she choked out between sobs. A terrible, stupid mistake. One for which I will eternally regret. But I see clearly now. I can see what we built together, the family that we raised, and what we could still have. What we built, I stated, was a lie, Eleanor. A lie that you created. I just didn't see it until the day you walked out. The day my world came crashing down. She flinched, but pressed on. We could try again. We could lay it up again just like you built this boat, one piece at a time. I don't blame you for being upset. What I did was selfish and wrong, but if you'd just give me a chance, maybe I could earn your trust again. Thomas, just give me one more chance. I looked at her, really looked, and I could see it, the performance, the same calculation I'd seen when she thought I couldn't hear her on her phone calls with Richard, the same contempt for my passion for boat building that she'd never quite hidden. She didn't want me. She wanted security, She wanted the trust fund I'd inherited from my grandfather. She wanted the comfortable life she'd always planned on. "I'm signing the trust papers this afternoon," I said, "at Pemberton's office, at 3 p.m. My solicitors and I have discussed a settlement plan to finalize the end of our marriage, Eleanor. I've set aside a financial settlement for you," I continued. "Comfortable, fair, enough for you to start fresh, live well. No vindictiveness, Eleanor, just closure." "That's not Thomas. We were married for 24 years. "We were. And you threw it away for a man who's now bankrupt and abandoned you. I'm being more than fair, Eleanor. More than you deserve, some would say." "I could fight this," she said. "I could take you to court, contest everything." "You could," I agreed calmly. "But you won't win, and you'll spend what little Richard left you on solicitor's fees. Take the settlement, Eleanor. It will be generous. It will be more than generous. You asked if we could try again. We share 24 years together, and together we have raised Emma. There is no hope for reconciliation, Eleanor, but there is hope that we can behave in a civilized manner for Emma's sake. Today I will sign, and tomorrow I will take Patience on her maiden voyage. Nothing too exotic, just some trials to test the rigging, and I'd like you to be with me. Tomorrow afternoon, just a few hours, we'll talk properly. No lawyers, no anger, just us and the sea. And then we can discuss everything and part ways properly." She studied my face, looking for the angle, the trap. "Why?" "Because," I said truthfully, "we did have 24 years. Not all of them were lies. And I'd rather end things with dignity than bitterness." She nodded slowly, calculating, but also, I think, genuinely surprised by the offer. "Tomorrow then, 2 o'clock?" 2 o'clock. Dress warm. It's Yorkshire in November." She left. I watched her walk up the quay, her step just a bit too quick, her mind already working on something. I knew what she was planning. She'd go to her solicitor, try to find leverage, try to contest the trust. Try one more scheme, because that's what Eleanor does. She can't help herself. For 4 years I built this boat, and for 24 years we had planned for the day that we would go sailing together. Tomorrow at 2 o'clock, I will set sail, and then we will talk. Emma and I had agreed to meet at a pub after she had finished visiting the chandlery. She knew that I had a scheduled appointment to sign the trust papers at Pemberton's office shortly afterwards. Over tea, I told Emma that her mother was hoping for a chance for reconciliation, to put things right and get the marriage back on track. I told Emma that reconciliation with her mother was not an option that I wanted to pursue. Eleanor and I shared 24 years together, and no matter what had transpired between us, I wanted her to live comfortably, without financial worries. In our private corner table, Emma whispered, "You'd do that for her? In spite of all she's done?" I touched Emma's hand and said, "I am not a vindictive man." Emma and I sat across from each other, and she said, "Dad, I've got something that I need to tell you. Something that I've hidden, because I didn't want to hurt you, but it's something that you need to know. This last year, while Richard and Mum were gallivanting around the Mediterranean on lavish cruise liners, I came home just to be with you. Dealing with divorce proceedings is a bit like a death in the family. I wanted to be with you to help you deal with the loss. While you were in the shed building Patience, I had the opportunity to go up into the attic and find some of my childhood treasures. I went through box after box of treasured memories until I came across a bundle of letters bound together with a faded ribbon. I know I shouldn't have read them, but I did. Dad, they were love letters between Mum and Richard. Dad, these were letters that dated back 25 years. The letters talked about their affair, about their plans, about me. Emma's voice cracked. Dad,
the letters said, Richard is my biological father.
The words hung in the air like fog over the harbour. I felt the world tilt. Not from shock, from a kind of terrible clarity, pieces falling into place. Eleanor's girls-only weekend trips. Her need to visit an aunt in the Midlands who was in failing health. Her timing in announcing her pregnancy. The strange pregnancy calculations. It just didn't add up. I reached across the table and took Emma's hands in mine. Emma, look at me. She did, tears streaming down her face. Biology doesn't change who we are. It doesn't change the last 20 years. It doesn't change that I taught you to tie a bowline and how to read charts. It doesn't change that you're my daughter, not his. Mine. But Dad, no, I said firmly. Listen to me. Richard is a man who abandoned his responsibilities, who schemed and stole and walked away when the money ran out. That's not a father. That's a biological accident. I'm the one who sat up with you when you had nightmares. I'm the one who taught you to sail, and I'm the one who's still here. That's what makes a father, Emma, not DNA. Choice. She was sobbing now, but nodding. I chose you the day you were born, I said quietly, and I choose you now. Nothing changes that. Nothing. We finished our tea in comfortable silence. Outside, the afternoon light was fading. Soon I'd be signing papers in Pemberton's office. What will you tell Mum on the boat tomorrow? Emma asked. The truth, I said, that she gets a fair settlement, that we part ways, that she made her choices and now lives with the consequences. Emma nodded. Then she looked at me with fierce determination. I hate her, Dad. Not for what she did to me, but for what she's doing to you. Tomorrow, I said, we will set sail and Eleanor will have one last choice to make, accept with dignity or continue to plot and scheme. Tomorrow we will find out what the future may hold, but now I have papers to sign with George Pemberton. George Pemberton's office sat above the old chandlery on Church Street. Dark wood, leather chairs, the smell of old paper and coal fires. George Pemberton, a seasoned solicitor, slid the papers across his desk. Everything's in order, Thomas, he said. The Maritime Trust, the harbour, the shore holdings, fishing rights, the complete inheritance is ready to be transferred to you upon your signature. I signed. George witnessed. It was done. We also discussed a settlement offer for Eleanor to end the marriage. I told George that I was going on the maiden voyage on Patience tomorrow with Eleanor so that we could talk about many things, including a fair settlement. Now, George said carefully, I should tell you something. Eleanor visited her solicitor this morning. Chap named Morrison, sharp practice that one. They're preparing to contest the trust. I nodded, not surprised. On what grounds? Emotional duress, financial coercion and non-disclosure of assets. They'll argue you manipulated her into accepting a lesser settlement while she was vulnerable. That's Eleanor, I said quietly. She never could accept fair terms, always had to have everything. George leaned back. The case is weak, very weak, but it would be expensive, unpleasant and public. She's counting on you settling to avoid the mess. Let her file, I said. Let her spend her money on Morrison's fees. The trust is airtight, isn't it, George? You made sure of that. I did, George confirmed. And then he asked, Thomas, why did you invite her sailing tomorrow? I looked out the window toward the harbour. Patience sat at her mooring, ready. Because I meant what I said. I'd rather end things with dignity. She can file her suit, waste her money and lose in court. but I'll have given her every fair chance, every opportunity to walk away with something. George nodded slowly. You're a better man than most, Thomas Aldridge, he said. Be careful tomorrow. I left the office. The afternoon was fading, clouds building over the North Sea. The next afternoon came in overcast and grey. The forecast was marginal, with a healthy breeze, building seas, rain moving in by evening. Not dangerous if you knew what you were doing, but not pleasant either. Eleanor arrived at 2:00, wearing her good sailing jacket, the one she'd bought years ago for a holiday we'd taken to the Isle of Wight, then never worn again because she'd discovered she didn't actually enjoy sailing. She preferred views of the Mediterranean from luxury cruise ships. Ready? I asked. She nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. I could see it in her eyes. She was still scheming, still thinking there was an angle to play. We cast off. Patience moved smoothly out of the harbour, her sails filling with the northeast breeze. The harbour master watched us go, gave me a nod. Once we cleared the harbour walls, the sea was restless, not vicious but assertive, 4-foot swells with wind gusts, the kind of conditions that remind you the North Sea doesn't care about you or your problems. Eleanor sat in the cockpit, one hand on the rail, not comfortable but putting on a show of it. Thomas, she began, about the settlement. Eleanor, I interrupted, keeping my eyes on the sails, before you say anything else, I should tell you that while you were away cruising the Mediterranean and sipping wine from crystal glasses in the Cotswolds, I paid out the entirety of the mortgage. I wanted to be sure that in our divorce settlement you receive a 50% entitlement of a home that is free and clear of financial encumbrances. No matter what has transpired between us, you are Emma's mother, and I want you to live with dignity and without worries about personal finances. In addition to the division of mutual assets, my solicitor and I discussed the creation of an annuity, with you being the beneficiary. Going forward, I want us to live our lives separately, but behaving as adults with mutual dignity and respect. I also know about Morrison, about the lawsuit you're planning. She had the grace to look caught. Thomas, I was just exploring my options. Any reasonable person would take a fair settlement and start fresh, I said evenly. But you're not interested in fair, are you, Eleanor? You never were. You want everything, even now. The wind gusted. Patience healed, and Eleanor grabbed the rail tighter. You humiliated me, she said, and now the performance dropped. Real anger showed through. You think you're so noble, so generous, setting aside a comfortable settlement like you're doing me some favour. I gave you 24 years. You gave me 24 years of lies, I said quietly. You gave me a daughter that wasn't biologically mine, a daughter that I love more than anything in this world. But you, Eleanor, you gave me contempt, mockery. You laughed about my work while Richard squandered his money. Don't talk to me about what you gave. She stood up, wobbly on the moving deck. That trust should be mine. Half of everything should be... Sit down, Eleanor. Don't tell me what to... Sit down. My voice carried over the wind. You're on my boat at sea. And if you don't sit down and hold on, you'll be swept overboard. She sat, sullenly, like a child being scolded. We sailed in silence for a while, the coastline receding behind us, nothing but grey water and dark clouds ahead. Then Eleanor spoke again, her voice different now, calculating. What if I didn't contest it? What if I took the settlement, signed everything, and we just parted ways, clean? Would you increase the amount? Make it worth my while to go quietly? And there it was, the final scheme, the last calculation. No, Eleanor. You have money, Thomas, the trust, the workshop. You get the settlement. It's more than fair. Her face hardened. Then I'll fight you. I'll drag this through every court in Yorkshire. I'll make you regret. the halyard slipped, and the mainsail caught some wind. I'd been watching the weather, watching the sails, watching her. We caught the crest of a wave, and a swirling gust of wind caught the mainsail. Patience swung about, and the boom swung. "Helms a lee!" I shouted, the old warning. But Eleanor was standing again, gesturing angrily, and she didn't know the language of sailing, didn't know what helms a lee meant, didn't know to drop, to get low, to watch out for the swinging boom. It caught her across the shoulders and back. She went over the side. The North Sea in November is 48 degrees. You have minutes before hypothermia sets in, maybe 10 before you lose consciousness. I was already moving. "Eleanor!" I shouted, marking her position. "Stay afloat!" The man overboard drill. I'd practiced it 1,000 times, knew it in my bones. Immediately turned to a reciprocal course, come about, watch the wind, mark her position against landmarks on shore. But the swells were running high now, 4 feet building to 5. She disappeared in the troughs, appeared on the crests. Her good coat was waterlogged, dragging her down. I brought Patience around, fighting the helm. The wind was against me, the seas pushing us farther apart with every second. "Eleanor, keep your head up!" But I couldn't see her anymore. I dropped the sails, started the engine, fought to find her position, to find her last known location. The light was failing, rain starting, visibility dropping. She was lost. "Eleanor!" Nothing but grey water and the sound of the wind. I circled, engine running, searching. 5 minutes, 10, 15. The water was dark, the sea was cresting, the light was failing. 20 minutes. The sea was building. I radioed the Coast Guard. "Coast Guard, this is Yacht Patience, Whitby Registry, man overboard, position 54 degrees, 27 minutes north." They took the details. Calm, professional. They'd launch the lifeboat and send a helicopter if visibility allowed. I kept searching, kept calling her name. But the North Sea in November doesn't negotiate. It doesn't care about schemes or settlements or 24 years of marriage. Weeks later, Eleanor's body was recovered on a rocky beach 5 miles north of Whitby. The inquest was brief. The Coast Guard report was thorough. The harbour master testified that conditions were marginal but not unsafe for an experienced sailor. That I'd followed proper procedure, made the radio call, conducted appropriate search. The coroner ruled accidental death, noted that the deceased was not wearing a life jacket, was standing in rough conditions, failed to respond to a proper sailing warning. "Mr. Aldridge did everything possible," the coroner said. "This was a tragic accident, nothing more." Eleanor's solicitor, Morrison, tried to make noise about suspicious circumstances, tried to suggest I'd lured her out there deliberately, but the evidence was clear. The weather logs, the radio transcript, the Coast Guard testimony. George Pemberton shut Morrison down with quiet, devastating efficiency. My client offered the deceased a generous settlement. She refused it and threatened litigation. He then offered her a peaceful afternoon sailing to part on better terms. She accepted. An accident occurred. My client followed every proper procedure. Unless you have evidence of malice, which you do not, I suggest you withdraw these implications before they become actionable slander. Morrison withdrew. We buried Eleanor in the Whitby Cemetery, up on the hill overlooking the harbour. A small funeral, a few distant relatives she'd never been close to, some people from the village who came out of duty more than affection. Emma stood beside me at the grave, her hand in mine. The vicar spoke about mercy and forgiveness, about how we're all flawed, all struggling, all in need of grace. I thought about Eleanor, about the woman I'd married 24 years ago, full of dreams and plans, about how somewhere along the way she'd traded love for security, traded honesty for schemes, traded everything real for the illusion of control, about how in the end she couldn't accept fair terms, couldn't stop scheming, Couldn't let go of wanting everything. After the funeral, Emma and I walked down to the harbour. Patience sat at her mooring, cleaned and ready. "Dad," Emma said quietly, "you tried. You gave her every chance." "I did," I said. "But I wonder sometimes if I'd just let her have it all. If I'd just signed everything over to her, let her take the trust, let her win. Would she still be alive?" Emma turned to face me, fierce and certain. "No, Dad, you can't think like that. She made her choices, every single one. You offered her fair terms. You offered her dignity. You even offered her peace. She chose to keep scheming, keep fighting, keep wanting more. That's not on you." I looked out at the grey water, at the North Sea that had taken Eleanor like it had taken many more. It would outlast all of us and all of our mortal schemes. We stood in silence for a long moment. "I've been talking to George about the annuity that I created for your mother and the Maritime Trust," I said. "Tomorrow, Emma, you will be receiving a solicitor's letter from George Pemberton. The letter will contain information about the Aldridge Family Maritime Trust. You will become the sole beneficiary of the trust. I don't want money that came from this. I will retain the annuity, my cottage and my shed. That's plenty good enough for me. Spend the funds wisely, Emma. Don't chase the ones who left you. Choose people who choose you, and finish what you started. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Emma." She hugged me then, fierce and long. 6 months after Eleanor's death, Emma asked if we could go sailing. Not to mourn, we'd done enough of that. Just to sail. We set sail before dawn, same way that we've been taught. One hand for the sea, one for yourself. Work together or you'll sleep with Davey Jones. Emma knew the rules, really knew them. Not from hearing, from understanding what happens when you don't follow them. When we prepared to tack, Emma took the halyard without being asked. No distraction, just presence. "Ready about?" I called. "Ready," she answered, and she was. "About, go!" We came about clean. No chaos, no violence, just two people working together, the way it should have been. I think about Eleanor sometimes, about what she could have been if she'd learned to be content with enough, if she'd learned to see the value in what was real, instead of always chasing what was more. Eleanor lived on her phone creating selfie poses for Instagram, clinging to her socially climbing schemes, consumed by greed. She kept both hands for herself and none for safety and security. She believed that rules were meant for everyone but her. The sea is still there, still grey and cold and unforgiving, still teaching that patience is rewarded, that honest work endures, and that you can't scheme yourself past the tide. If this story hit home, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe. This is Ruin Afterwards, stories about betrayal, consequences, and what happens when you have nothing left to lose. Our next story, a mechanic wakes up to the fact that his wife has been emasculating him progressively over the years and that she has a final secret and dastardly plot. Does he continue to endure the humiliation just to save his marriage, or does he leave and start all over again? The Auto Traitor, up next.